So hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive. Stephen and Crispina with you today, and it's all about kids, or rather the lack of them.
Yes, we are talking about our total fertility rate, and it's very low to the point that we're not even replacing ourselves.
I've done my part. I've got 2 kids in tow. What about you?
So have I.
Okay. But it seems that fur kids are the new norm.
Yes,
Yeah?
fur kids are the new norm. No children, pets instead.
Yeah, it's made me pause and think about it. Why are they doing that? I mean, kids can be challenging, but they're a whole lot of fun. And I can't imagine life without them now.
I mean, having kids is a very personal choice, but it's almost like it's a butterfly effect because it has such a deep impact on the country. Our total fertility rate has fallen to a record low this year.
Yeah, it's below 1, right? So we're not even replacing ourselves. And they've tried a bunch of things, cash handouts, parenthood schemes, more child care leave, but nothing seems to be sticking. So is there a solution? What will work?
So today we're going to dive in and find out why.
We want to talk about Singapore's total fertility rate. It's been on Singapore's mind for a long time. It's fallen to a historic low of 0.97. Now, in very simple terms, I guess the number refers to the number of children the average woman would have in her lifetime. So less than 1, well, that's not very good, right?
Not very good at all. The scary thing is that this number has been sliding for quite some time now, since 2017. So the question is, what does it mean for us, what as a society, and what does it mean for the people who do decide to go ahead and have children? Yeah.
Norman, maybe you start, because we've been looking at this issue for some time now. It's a topic that you're familiar with. Give us the 101. Why are so many countries in the world suffering from such low fertility rates?
It's an interesting question, and then one that a lot of people have been looking at, but there are, not any definitive answers. But it has something to do with modernity, because these are the modern countries at the forefront of development and technology and economic progress. So these countries are having the least amount of children, and within these countries, it's the wealthiest individuals who are having the least amount of children as well. So yeah, it's not really all due to a money problem, because these are wealthy countries, wealthy individuals. I think we have to look at things that increase our stress and that take us away from natural environments. So for instance, if you look at animals in zoos, they have a tough time getting them to breed, right? Because they're oftentimes living in environments.
Because we are looking at them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're looking at them. So that's not natural.
Versus them being out in the jungle, free and,
Exactly.
Okay, so in a way, similar to us, because we're trapped in this work environment. We have to go to work, earn money, take care of the, bring home the bacon, put food on the table, that kind of thing. So
that's right.
No time for free play.
Yeah, there's no time for free play, to roam around. We're interacting with devices and strangers now, and not our family and familiar friends and people like that. We're facing population densities of, up to 10,000 times higher than what our brains are actually built for. And so this creates a lot of stress. And when this happens, all organisms, including humans, tend to go away from mating and reproduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
When they're stressed.
Yes, when they're stressed.
I think it's also about opportunity. You have the opportunity to go out and have a career, for example. Holly, I've had you on a podcast before, and you were talking about some of the choices you had to make, right? When it came to your career. So why are you so sure about the one and done?
So I do identify quite a bit with what Dr. Lee said about, I guess I don't see it as stress, I see it as choice. So for me, career, spending alone time playing with my phone, pursuing hobbies. I do see that there's a lot of things that I want to have more time to do. And being a mother of just one boy already, I feel so deprived of other aspects of my life. I just cannot imagine having another one come along.
So it's more because you want your me time back.
Yes, my me time to do, just laze around, lie in bed and play my phone. And also me time to pursue my career, to do more, to spend more time thinking about what I want to get out of work. Also me time doing things that I like outside of.
Do you feel that when you have kids, you have to give that other aspect up? There's some kind of a sacrifice in order to have kids? Because it's either this or that, right?
I do see it that way, yes. And I think maybe also evolutionarily, we are getting a little bit more selfish than our parents and grandparents' generation, where they really do see the family giving back as a part of who they should be.
Yeah. Actually, women in an IPS survey, more women said that they are okay with being even single. And if they wanted to settle down, kids were not really that important. Are you surprised by that, Dr. Norman?
Well, it is a little bit surprising because that's not how it's been for throughout human history. But some of these trends are due to modern things happening. Women are becoming more educated and earn more income and have greater career opportunities. Like the modern world, there are a lot of things going on and a lot of things to do. And work takes a lot of time also. And then you need time to de-stress and to explore yourself and do other things. And so people are having less time for children, and children still need a lot of time. And in fact, they might even require more time now because of this competitive world to get them ready.
Does it have to be that way where, I mean, I've got 2 kids, and yes, it required a lot of investment in the early years. But now I feel that I can very much have my life and still enjoy having the kids and the family too. So perhaps would you dare to take on a challenge like that where it may be transitional, where the early years seem tough? Yes, they are. But it's not forever. You will have your me time back.
Just 20 years later, Steve.
Okay, maybe 10 years. No.
Well, I think for me, I'm going through it right now, so I just cannot see a near future where there's a possibility. And also for me, I have a very young brother who's 12 years younger than me. So I have seen my mother raise me when she was relatively young, and then when she was more middle-aged, she had my brother, and she had to go through that again, and it was even harder on her from a health perspective. And as an older mom, she tends to also worry a lot more for my brother compared to other parents of my brother's age.
Which is why you shouldn't wait anymore. Just hurry up and have
no, and so from that personal, experience, I would not have one now, and I cannot imagine having one in the future when I've already gotten out of this pit.
Could anything change your mind? Would more money, more subsidies, easier school access, any of that?
This might be a bit controversial, but if I have a surrogate, maybe I think that could be a possibility. So I don't have to go through pregnancy and maternity. I can just have the baby in my arms.
That could probably be arranged, yeah.
No, that is legal in other parts.
Yeah, not in Singapore yet, right?
Yeah, not here in Singapore.
Yeah, but let's talk about the money. Okay, so the one thing that this government has is money. Some people say it throws money at a problem that money cannot solve. I was looking at all the benefits. I mean, come on, that's quite a lot, right? I mean, 8,000 to 11,000, for children on baby bonus and childcare subsidies. Paternity leave has been doubled. So all that is coming at quite a big bill, but it's not sticking. So let's unpack this a little bit, right? The first thing people say when they don't want kids is it's way too expensive.
Right.
Is it? Like some people would say, it depends on your perspective.
That's because I got to have the tuition, swimming lessons, piano lesson, art class.
Or you want to send your kid to a private preschool, not the PCF kindergarten, etc. Is that fair?
I think it is fair for sure, but it's also the easiest thing for the government to look at addressing. That, okay, other factors we cannot control, right? Okay. What women think, what they want to pursue, we cannot control.
Yeah.
But what we can control is to give out a lot of bonuses, child support. So I think the government is doing all they could to be fair. But then there's also the part that, frankly, I just don't see how the government can really change, which is what women want out of their lives.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are some who may want to have more kids, but just feel that their circumstances don't allow them to. So such subsidies and schemes will
definitely help.
But I guess what we're saying is that there's still a fairly small group of people in the larger scheme of things.
But it'll probably help people who are right on the cusp, right? Just hemming and hawing, and then now here's some more money. Okay, yeah, let's do it. But for a lot of people, it can't just completely reverse them 180 degrees because they're psychologically already pointed the other direction. Yeah.
So when I talk to some of my younger friends, and they say it's not about the diapers and the milk, really. It's a long haul cost. And so if you tell them, don't give tuition, don't do swimming, don't do piano, whatever, and they say, but this is Singapore.
Yeah.
You
That's a
can't
problem.
be in this environment and not.
Yeah, actually, you can. You totally can, right? Because
You can?
if you think about our ancestors for 99% of human evolutionary history, we lived on the brink of starvation. They didn't think like, oh, should I have a child or not? It's so difficult. We have it much, much easier than them, right? But we're evolved to be very competitive, and especially in Asia, we want them to be the best, and to get there, it'll be very costly and very labor intensive.
How are we going to change that mindset? And then, I mean, you're saying it's possible, but those who say it's possible are often those who can afford to send their kids overseas, to take other options. But that's not the larger population.
Yeah, this is going to take a lot of research into these kind of non-tangible type of factors, that how to get to those, and really ultimately to reduce the stress reaction that our brains naturally have when we feel like we can't get these things done. Because this kind of reaction kept us alive for millions of years. But nowadays, it's not like that anymore. You can live and not be the top, and not be like way above the average. You could be below average and you still survive here, right?
But which parent's going to say, it's okay. It's okay if my kids are below average, Do you ever feel that, Holly? Do you feel like your kid has to have the best of everything?
Because I'm quite a pessimistic worrywart. So when I was pregnant, I was thinking, okay, I want my son to be act like the top of his game, best in class, go to Ivy League and all of that. But once he came along, I see him in my arms, and I just feel like I just need him to be happy, healthy, and safe. And I just cannot imagine if anything were to happen to him. So now 3 years on, I don't send him to anything. I don't force anything on him. I'm completely okay, actually, at this point, that if he doesn't go to a good school, he's just medium, average on everything. For now, I really think because he's my one and done, all I want for him is to be happy and healthy.
Okay, wait till he goes to primary school.
Yeah, what you going to say?
Yeah, maybe because at 3 years old, there's
Wait
not
till
much
he
competition.
starts not doing so well in math, and then you start panicking, right?
No, wait till you're in that primary 2 chat group and you go, have you seen the Chinese homework? It's due tomorrow. And you'll be like, what Chinese homework?
Okay, let me enjoy this few years more.
Let's talk a little bit about the stress. You mentioned that earlier, right, Norman? Yeah, this is something that's part and parcel of advanced economies. Surveys show that a lot of us are very tired emotionally, psychologically, physically, etc. After work. So how important is this? This is the second thing that comes up whenever we talk about why we don't want to have kids. It's just too stressful.
I think it's an extremely important factor when people or organisms feel stressed.
Yeah.
They turn away from mating and reproduction, and then they invest more in themselves. They wait it out, especially for humans like us living in very safe conditions. We tend to wait it out because we think we have a long time, right? We get another degree. We want to go for that promotion. We're going to study hard and work hard and save up and do all these kind of things, right? I mean, if you grow up in very poor, chaotic conditions, it's just the opposite. Those people feel stressed and they reproduce faster. They spend like there's no tomorrow because there might not be a tomorrow. Right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you have to find a way in this setting to reduce the stress.
So the irony is because our country is quite safe, you are secure, you have a good job, you don't worry.
Holly, you were talking about this, right? I mean, your work is all-consuming. You like it. You were telling us before that you enjoy the work. So for you to, come home and then worry about, maybe the kid is not behaving or not doing something, is that at the back of your mind when you're thinking about, having more kids?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just tend to worry about everything that I'm doing. When I'm at work, I worry about work. I get off work, I worry about work. Oh, well, I'm at work, I'm worried about my kid. And then when I'm off work, I'm worrying about work. And then, if I'm on social media too much, then I worry about not spending time with my son. But when I'm with my son, I'm thinking about social media.
Okay.
Definitely there's a lot of stress, I would say, happening in my head. But I think a lot of them are not actual stress. It's self-induced kind of all over the place.
But yeah, I'm sure that your husband's around. Does he also step in to help? So doesn't that help alleviate some of that stress?
It definitely does. I feel like the stress or the work doesn't go away just because, or doesn't get reduced just because two people are doing it. Because two people are doing it, somehow in your head, there's actually more things to be done. So then there can always be more help that can come along. My husband is a super involved father.
Yeah.
He's, at night we made it a point to really just spend time with our son.
Right.
But even then, I don't know, I just feel there's just so much to think about.
But can you switch off? Like if your husband's taking the kid out for a walk in the park, can you just, okay, now I can go and have my me time and just forget about them?
I can, but it tends to be very short. Usually when he takes him out for a walk, it's like really a 10-minute walk. And then they're
Oh, okay. Tell them to take a longer walk. Because I think that's part of the whole sharing the load, right? You give each other time and space. So if I take the kids out, I bring them out, and my wife has the afternoon off. She should know that I'm capable enough to care for the kids so that she can switch off.
Because in Korea, for example, one of the key things about why women don't want to have more kids is because they actually have a very kind of like a paternalistic approach to things where women do the caregiving very heavily, and men take care of, the work. They think to themselves, if I'm going to carry the load, I'm not going to have no more kids. Singapore is slightly different. I'm sure your husband is a good example. I see around me younger men.
I would argue that we're not like that at all. That
Not-
many younger
not
generation I've
all-
seen. I mean, no, the
not
older
all, some-
generation, I would say yes, but I was quite hands-on. But even in my generation, there were maybe a mixture of us. But now I look at the young ones, and I think
They are very
they're all
hands-on,
there.
right?
They're
all
really
there.
hands-on.
Yeah, I think Singapore is actually really, I would say, a prime example of gender equality, where dads want to be just as involved with their kids, and there is no judgment anywhere in terms of who is bringing home the bacon, or whether it's single income, double income. It could be men, it could be women, and both could be working. There is no, I feel, any sort of gender bias as much as you would see in some of the other countries.
As much as you would see, but who calls, okay, your kid is not in school yet. So usually when my female colleagues, when the teacher calls a parent, it's the mom they call. It's,
Oh, that's true. I think that's generally true, yeah. The mother's usually more involved.
Well, it depends. I mean, if the
on
father is
average.
the one always showing up at the parent-teacher gatherings, then I'm sure he would be on speed dial, not the mom.
Did the teachers call you or your wife? When
No,
your
because I don't give my number. So.
Smart
for other reasons. But I show up.
Yeah, but so I think that still is at the back of women's minds.
It is. Now, throughout, again, evolutionary history, men didn't do the childcare that much, but that doesn't mean that men are completely off the hook. The children relied on other people in the village, other extended family, older brothers and sisters, cousins, and aunts and uncles and grandparents, right? They're all involved. Everybody, it's like it takes a whole village to raise a child, right? So that's the problem. So it's not just men aren't doing enough, which, that would be nice to have that, more of that. But I think, it's the availability of everyone in the family. They're all scattered and doing often their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about a whole village. Sure, we don't have that kampong spirit anymore. We don't live life like that. But
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking our village should be where the workplace is one that cares for family, allows you to have some flexi time to deal with needs when you can, that encourages fathers to be more involved, but same thing with the schools who also engage both parents, not just
Yeah.
the mother or just the father. So that becomes your community, right?
Yeah, because the paternity leave take-up rates are still not ideal.
I know, it's crazy. I had 1 day. Yeah. I had 1 day of paternity leave. This was eons ago, but yeah, I couldn't
People
believe
have
it.
4 weeks now.
Now it's, yeah.
Wow.
But
4?
yeah,
The
it's
men.
going to
Men.
be
Oh, okay.
double. Yeah,
And I think you can share it, right? I'm not
yes,
sure
you
share
can
with
share
yeah,
the
that's
maternity
awesome,
leave.
yeah.
But the take-up rate apparently is maybe half. I think most men take 2 weeks, for sure after the wife gives birth. But the hardest parts are not the immediate aftermath of the
Yes.
birth.
Yes.
It's really the few months down the road when you're struggling like crazy to deal with breastfeeding. So men are not taking in that stretch because they're thinking, my boss is going to think, what are you doing? You're taking all this time off.
No, I don't think that's the case. I would say that because sometimes the men feel that I can't do anything. I'm home, but the breastfeeding issue is something that what can I do as a guy, right?
Yeah, my husband's like that.
Yeah.
I think the first month or two, really, the dad can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because the baby's with the mother all the time.
Yeah.
But I do think what helps is maybe more flexibility for men to work from home and more encouragement for them to take that flexibility and not feel compelled to have to come to the office and show FaceTime.
Yeah.
I think spreading that out throughout the first 1, 2, 3 years even, that's actually what's more helpful.
This is the other thing that I think the government is trying quite hard to do. I think they're going to really press in on the workplace, to get employers to give a little bit more leeway to parents. So that they can take time off when they need to. I think parents get 6 days of childcare leave, right? Some child sick leave and stuff like that. But if you have 2 children, you know how often they fall sick, right? Yeah, so you use that up real quick.
If everyone, was just approached this differently, where employers didn't have to just legislate and say you have 6 days and only 6 days, but as and when you're a good worker, Holly, I know if you want time off, I'll give it to you because I know you will make up for it some other time. To trust your employees, to trust that they will do what is needed and necessary. And I think when you have that whole environment, then you feel more relaxed. You know you can go when your child gets sick all of a sudden, that you can care for them. And I think then, overall everyone will be a bit more open to the idea of procreating.
Are you, positive that we might turn the tide?
I think that in theory it is possible to do something, but it's going to take a lot more research and experimentation and things. But ultimately it is a heavy downward trend because the modernization, and as more technology is introduced, the more unnatural the life that we live, the more stress, the more responsibilities, the more tasks we have to do. That just is going to take us more and more away from reproduction. It's inevitable.
I think what we're trying to do now is just maybe just turn things around so that, perhaps people will start approaching it differently and look at life differently.
I do think the nature of Singapore society is competitive, and there's always something to aspire towards, which kind of delays this whole process of settling down, getting married. Exactly. And when you reach a point where you're already in your 30s or late 30s, you would think that, okay, I just don't have the bandwidth or I don't have the mental, physical health to have a child or two. So I think it's maybe a little bit more fundamental than that to look at overall as a society. Is it, we are, just constantly in the pursuit of something better and making people feel like that, that a better life is within reach. And so we are constantly delaying this process of birth giving to a point of no return.
Right.
See, I think there is a natural trade-off between economic progress and the reproduction in a modern society. So you cannot have both very easily, if at all.
Yeah. And that's the irony, right? That the more we earn, the smarter we get, the more we enjoy life.
The less children we
have.
The less sex we actually have too.
Really?
Yeah. I think the more educated, smarter people have even less sex. Yeah.
I don't think I'm representative of, other women, but for me, I think I've made up my mind at least 3 years ago when I had my child. Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Well, at least you've had one, so that's...
Yes, at least I've one, yes.
The government is determined, to address this challenge. They're not gonna just leave it be. If you were, talking to them, having had this experience, what would you suggest be top of their list that they need to think about?
What I can think of just off of the top of my head would be to make it easier for young couples to have a house.
Okay. Number one.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, having a house is oftentimes just the beginning of you settling down, thinking even of having a family. I remember when I was starting out in my career, my husband and I, or my boyfriend and I at the time, we were thinking, okay, we want to bid for this BTO. We have to wait 5 years. We were very lucky to get the bid the first time we tried, but we have to wait 5 years. And we were already in our mid-20s. So by the time we get the BTO, we were already 30. Yeah. So maybe making that process somehow simpler for younger people so they settle down earlier and then they have more years to think about what to do.
Not necessarily building more flats, because that's also tough, right? Maybe some other interim solution where you can actually maybe rent or own or something.
As Lee Kuan Yew said, it's that's not the money. necessarily, right? So now we're looking at workplace, making workplace more family friendly and things like that. I think that's a good step. We have to look into more the psychological factors. Effect of what I'm looking at in my research is the effect of exposure to high population density cues, things like this, economic uncertainty, things that come with globalization and high competition. I've found that they influence our attitudes, make them more negative for having family, make us want to delay these things more and more. So I think we need to do more research on these kind of factors, our exposure to different things in the modern world, and how they impact our decision making for this particular question.
Okay. That's going to be a big study, and that's like so many things in our lives, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, my view is that I think overall, if we just make life easier, make school easier, make it free, in fact, make university free too for all Singaporeans, make school more enjoyable, ban tuition, take away all that competition that we have, and I think when we can just enjoy the process of living and learning, then people will be a lot more relaxed and enjoy life more.
Definitely.
Overall.
Yeah. My impression is when I talk to young people is that they have this perception that having kids is a hard slog.
Right.
They only focus on the negative parts about having kids. There's so many nice things about having kids.
Holly, stop talking to them.
That's my one contribution.
Yeah, but I think it is indeed an intractable problem for us to solve, and we'll just have to see how it goes. Yeah, thank you for joining us for this discussion today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks to the CNA podcast team, Saya Win, Tiffany Ang, Janani Johari, and Joanne Chan. Our sound designer is Ken Delbridge.